Hi. Today we are introducing a new series and we are calling it A is for Authors because we started in April. And so our first person that we're going to interview is Miss Brenna Caggiano. Mrs. Caggiano is the author of Patrick the Irish Immigrants. And you can find the book at Amazon. So if you're interested in it after you hear this interview from this very fascinating lady, then you might want to go out and pick up a copy of the book. So the first thing, I welcome Mrs. Caggiano.
Thank you very much.
And so we're going to kind of talk about what was the inspiration for your story.
Well, my father always talked about his life story, and he said he was going to write a book. Well, he never got around to it, so I said, well, I'll get around to it. So I started writing, and I interviewed my father. And then I had to do a lot of research. It took me forever to do the research and put his story together and so on like that. So together, this is what we have in the book. It's a true story. He had a fascinating life, a very adventurous life, and we were along for the journey.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So did he like to share his stories with you? How many were in your
Yes.
family?
Well, I have two other sisters,
Mm-hmm.
and he liked to share his stories true.
Mm-hmm.
He was a typical Irishman, loved to tell storytelling and things like that. He talked about Ireland and all the things that he had done. He was in World War II, and he was in the Pacific Theater, and very hard back then. And so he was there during Pearl Harbor, and so was my mother. And so it was interesting.
Okay, my next question, since your father loved to tell stories, did you inherit that same knack, and do you tell your grandchildren stories and your children's stories?
Yes. I think you've heard of my other one that I tried, like life can be laughable.
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell those stories especially. And I do tell my grandchildren about my father and what I did as a child. You know, I was born in Hawaii, and then later we lived in California, Washington, D.C., Maryland, New Jersey, and then down here in Florida. Thank heavens, Florida.
Kind of like Hawaii, Florida balance.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Very much so.
So you were born in Hawaii.
Yes.
Yes, So yeah, and we've had you here before to show how to do the hula. Yes. Okay. All right. So when you share your stories with your grandchildren, I know your son is older now. So, but when you share with your grandchildren, how do they react?
Okay, usually it's on St. Patrick's Day, and I am definitely dressed in green, and then I try to have them at least have something green. So we would go to McDonald's and have the Shamrock Shake, you know, and they'd have the hats on and things like that. Especially when they were little, they didn't mind, but as they get a little older, they're going, "Oh, Nana, please." You know?
Well, it's a
But I
fun
said,
time.
you have to have something green on, you know. My son, he'll wear a green shirt.
Mhm.
My husband will wear a green shirt. So, you know, we're still there.
Mhm.
Even my daughter-in-law will wear a green, you know, anything, even a little pin, something, you know.
Yes. So you want to continue that Irish heritage.
Yes, I do, very much
yes.
so.
And I think that's a great way of celebrating it.
Yes.
Now, one of the traits that your father had, that he was very driven, ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that comes from being Irish, or you just think that he just inherently had that?
I think he had that. You know, some are like that and others are not.
Mm-hmm.
He just, you know, if it didn't work out for him, we're moving on. That's all. So he was in the service. When we went to California, he was in inactive duty. And he was at a depot for the military. He worked there. And then he learned that these scientists were doing all kinds of interesting things, and that's why we moved to Washington, D.C., so he worked for them. And then we just kept moving on until we got to New Jersey, and he was an airport manager of an experimental center for the government, and that included all ranks of the service. And he did the airplanes and things like that. Yeah. So it was interesting.
Yeah, he sounds like he has a very interesting story.
Yes.
Do you think that part of his drive to do better led him to come to America?
Oh, yes. In Ireland, it was kind of poor. And so he wanted to come to America because all they heard about is the streets of gold. You know, they got to go to the streets of gold. You know, of course, they knew it wasn't gold. But there was opportunity and things like that. But when he came, it was during Depression time.
Wow.
Of all times to come. But he was driven that he got a job. And, you know, he'd get up early in the morning and seek a job. And of course, he used a lot of malarkey to get a job. In those days, you didn't have the computer to check on somebody, you know. So he told these wild stories about himself, that he had this, you know, college education and so on like that, which he didn't. But he got his job. And that's what was important.
He had the smarts.
Yes.
How old was he when he came?
He was 17 years old. Can you imagine coming to a foreign country, 17 years old, all by yourself? All by yourself. I can't imagine. Today, we're worried about our child walking down the street. You know, really.
Yes.
What a difference.
Well, it sounds like he was quite a man, you know, so he wanted to do all those things. And so you tell about all of his adventures in your book.
Yes, I do. Very much so.
Okay, all right.
But he was driven to come here. And, you know, his family says, well, you don't have a job. And he'd say, not to worry. That was the big sign. Not to worry, you know, because he got a job.
Well, did any of his family come over after he did?
In later years, they came over in, let's say, the late 50s. One of his brothers and his family came over. And he tried to tell his brother how to go for an interview, but the brother wouldn't listen. You know, so therefore he didn't get a job right away. And he finally listened to my father, and he got a job. When he got citizenship, he was in Hawaii at the time. See, he was in New York City. He went around through the Panama Canal, on up to San Francisco, over to Hawaii. Then he worked in a sugar plantation as a boss, and he was still in active duty. And so around that time is when he got citizenship. And I wasn't around, and he wasn't married to my mother at that time. Yeah. So he was very happy because this was his adopted country. Yes, most definitely.
And at that time, Hawaii wasn't a state yet, was it?
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
So, yeah, okay.
But it took him a while, and that, you know, I'm thinking of people today coming through the border. And we have people that are here that are taking their time, because that's what you have to do in order to get your citizenship. And I like the right way instead of the wrong way, you know.
Yeah, and rules have changed so much over the years that, you know, I guess when he became a citizen was like in the late 40s or early 50s or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah. So
Well, I would say, wait a minute, late 30s.
Late 30s? Wow.
Yes. Because, you know, the war broke out in 43, so anyway.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, I think that everybody needs to take a look at Patrick the Irish Immigrants, because it sounds like he had quite an adventure. You know, you don't think about it. And there are so many books being written now about immigration and people who immigrate and how they get here. And I think that America has been called a melting pot, and so many people came from other countries, and so this is a testimony on how he immigrated and what were the results of his immigrations and
Right,
things.
exactly. Yes.
So, I think that, everybody needs to take a look at it. Now, let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
I know you are a great storyteller, and I just wonder when you're going to put that other book into print.
Well, so far it's not that long. That's the problem. I mean, this would be a long story.
Yeah.
But
People write short stories. You can
Yes.
just gather all your little short stories together.
I just wish I would have had more people to listen to, because you were in
Yeah,
hysterics laughing.
and I shared it with my daughter, and she and I could not repeat everything you said, and so I wish that other people have opportunity to read it because they're just so great. Now, you said your dad was full of malarkey, so
Oh, yes.
you
I am
you think
too.
you
Yes.
so, yeah, you said you think you got some of that in you, so
Yes.
yeah, because I really enjoyed reading and would love to read them over again, and but you are so talented,
Thank
and but people don't know that unless they read this book or unless they hear those great stories that you
Yeah.
have to tell. Anybody in your family has inherited that sense of
Well, my sister Heather, since then she has passed away, but my sister Heather, when we would go across the country to get to California, we'd always go a different route so we'd see the whole United States. And for my dad to drive, and it was driving straight through, and she'd get up to the front seat, and to keep him awake, she'd tell him stories, and so that'd keep him awake, So she was a great storyteller. When she would tell about a simple thing that happened, you were in hysterics listening to it,
and that's
She
how
was
you
great.
had me in hysterics listening to your stories. So I hope that one day you do put them. I mean, even in short story form,
Yeah.
to share with others, because many people write just and self-publish and do that.
Yeah.
So this particular book, how many copies have you sold?
I sold 400 because it comes in hard copy, softback, and it's an ebook also. So, and people just get it. Now, it definitely has slowed down, because it's been a few years since I've written it. So, anyway,
Yeah.
but people are still buying it once in a while, stuff like that. So, I'm always surprised when I look at it. Whoa, okay.
Yeah, somebody else is interested.
Yes.
Yeah, so we recently purchased some books in your honor, and they were all Irish-based books, and so and we should have displayed this book when we were
That's right.
putting
Yeah.
your picture out, but we didn't even do that. But it's just been an honor to have you here because you are such a great storyteller. And that's from me, my opinion. You all should hear her stories. And I hope that she gets that collection of stories that she's written and put it in print, and so that other people can share, because it's a pleasure to hear all that talent come from you as you, read our stories when we had our last April is for Authors Day.
Yeah.
And so I thank you for being here. I thank you for sharing with us, and I encourage people to highlight our Fort Meade author who has written Patrick the Irish Immigrants, because her stories the story is great. Her stories are great. She's an exceptional, talented malarkey writer, so she can tell you a story or a tale, and it reminds you of some of the stereotypes that they say when an Irishman tells his stories, her tales that she tells, and so maybe one day she'll read some of them, but I do want her to, make a profit off of her stories, but because they're so great. But thank you,
Thank
Miss
you very much for
Cagiano,
having
for
me.
being with us.
I have people, get this from Amazon, or you could get it from iUniverse. Either one you can get my book.
Okay.
So if you have an ebook, it's nice and cheap to get. So please order one.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you
Thank
for
you so
joining us.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you.